Welcome, you're watching Head to Head. I'm Antonina Antosha with UATV. Ukrainian journalist Roman Sushchenko, illegally detained in Russia, has been declared guilty of espionage by a Moscow court and sentenced to 12 years in a maximum security prison. Another Ukrainian citizen, film director Oleg Sentsov, who is illegally held in Russian prison, is on a hunger strike. As are the other Ukrainian citizens jailed by Russia, servicemen Alexander Shumkov, activists Volodymyr Beluch and Alexander Kolchenko. The situation for all of them becomes more dire with every passing day. But the Kremlin remains silent. To talk more about this, we're joined in the studio today by Russian politician Ilya Ponomarev. Hello and thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So, as I have already mentioned, the situation with the political prisoners, with the prisoners of Kremlin, with the citizens of Ukraine is getting more and more cruel. It's getting more and more harsh every day. Could you comment?
It's unfortunately the fact that at Russian power, it's a true mob, and this mob behaves by criminal rules. And gangs, they take hostages. And that's exactly what happens there. So Sushchenko is a classical hostage. Sentsov is a classical hostage. So there's a division into different
types of hostages, okay.
Yeah, so the guys have done nothing illegal, but they're just sympathetic towards Ukraine, and they were captured for future exchanges, and that could be the exchanges for the real terrorists, the real fighters against the independent Ukraine, who are now being held in Ukrainian prison. So that can be a political actions on behalf of Ukrainian government.
Well, speaking of the prisoner exchange, Ukraine is already ready now to exchange Sushchenko for 23, right? For 23 Russian political prisoners. And Vladimir Putin remains silent on that. He says that it's in the power of some kind of democratic court that is
independent from Vladimir Putin.
Yes, independent from Vladimir Putin, absolutely not controlled by the Kremlin. What could be the outcome? Why doesn't he want to swamp one Ukrainian political prisoner for 23 of the Russian political prisoners?
No, firstly to say, we are not talking about swapping one for 23. We are talking about swapping a number of those hostages that have been held in Russian prisoners, including Sentsov and Kolchenko and some others, for several prisoners that are being kept in Ukraine. So it's not like one for 23. But it doesn't make much of a difference, because what is happening right now is pure, straightforward bargain. Just Vladimir Putin doesn't want to give up his asset for free. That's his approach, as I'm saying, as a mobster.
If he doesn't want to give up his asset for free, what does he want in exchange?
Well, he wants to achieve the maximum resonance before the soccer championship in Russia. So most likely, if to conduct the exchange, he wants to do it as close to the championship as possible.
Oh, so he's the good guy.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. So firstly, he wanted to organize a terrorist attack here in the capital of Ukraine when it was the League of Champions finals. And we know this famous story about the attempt to assassinate Arkady Babchenko, which was linked to the day of championship.
Well, right now they're naming it as a faked murder, as a special SBU operation, which is totally different from an assassination attempt. But we'll talk about it later.
No, the assassination attempt is real. There was a real assassination attempt. You know, they pretended that it was successful, and that's the only fake part of it, because the attempt was absolutely real, and it's a huge success for Ukrainian security that they prevented this terrorist act.
Taking into account what you just said, what do you think the international reaction to this special SBU operation should be?
I think they should praise Ukrainian security. It's a true success story, and there is nothing different from what security services of other nations have done in the past. We know the examples.
How do we prevent Russia from trying to do this again?
Nothing except for good work of counterintelligence.
Okay, well, speaking of, not speaking of, but Ukraine's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has repeatedly stated a note of discontent with what Russia is doing concerning Ukrainian political prisoners. And obviously, the rest of the world also sees what is happening. Why is there no appropriate reaction?
You know, unfortunately, of course, this is an issue of double standards. Ukraine is not officially part of any of Western alliances. It's not part of NATO. It's not part of European Union. It's some Eastern European country which expressed its sympathies towards the West, but so far is not associated as being part of one. And
looks like flirting.
Yeah, so it's a process, and at the end of the day, all the politicians, they want to report to their constituents with some sort of success story. And Ukraine currently is pretty far from being a success story, and Russia is doing everything that it's not becoming one. And of course, they want to keep certain distance, so that when there are certain breakthroughs and certain positive news, that's because West has done something. But when there are some negative news, like West pretends
has nothing
not
to
to
do
notice.
with it. Okay, well, speaking again, coming back to the situation with the political prisoners, the situation might get even worse. What if the worst thing happens? The outcome that cannot be changed? I mean, what if people start dying? I
hope that would not happen, of course, but you know.
How do you see it? Do you actually think that Vladimir Putin is going to pardon them just before the soccer championship?
I think it is likely. I think, and what I have heard from my sources in Moscow, that if not Sentsov, he is generally ready to do that. For some reason, he is particularly keen on keeping Sentsov, probably because the guy had become such a high-profile international figure.
Yeah.
From the other side, maybe Vladimir Putin genuinely believes that he was planning to conduct something in Crimea, and Sentsov is about Crimea.
Do you actually believe that?
I don't believe it's a single moment, but you know, it doesn't mean that Vladimir Putin, who is getting information from security services report, do not believe otherwise, because at the end of the day, you know, those guys at FSB, they want to get their own career promotions, and for them, it's a good thing to capture a real terrorist. And so most likely they were reporting that he's a genuinely terrorist, you know, was planning to do some attacks on Russian infrastructure.
Okay. List of 47. What do you know about that? What can you say about it?
Well, you know, to my mind, it's kind of a long list. Almost like no, it's like I don't understand when the menu for the killer is that wide.
Okay.
You know, everything can happen, and I understand that you know, the people who are on that list are genuinely enemies of Putin and the Kremlin. So most likely they are dissatisfied with those guys, and most likely, in general, something like that was discussed within the network of FSB agents. At the end of the day, it's not that they are targeting one particular person. Why, like, Arkady Babchenko was so special for them, and how he is better than, I don't know, Matvey Ganapur.
The vicious critic of the Kremlin.
No, I understand, but like, what is so special about him in particular? I think that they were selecting just a target which was the easiest to attack. You know, with the certain parameters of public resonance and public opinion, but because it's not a murder per se, it's a murder as a terrorist act. So it's like all terrorists; they just want to get as much media splash as possible, and in this case, what is the particular first and last name is irrelevant for them, because they are not taking this as a human being, as a person with a wife and kids.
Just
and
a media
interests.
Story.
Yeah, it's about media.
Okay, so in general, what do you think would be the outcome of this whole political prisoner situation?
No, I hope it would be resolved before the soccer championship. As I'm saying, I think that the chances are pretty high, and there is a certain list of political prisoners that was discussed before Putin's inauguration on May 7th this year. That was even presented to him by one of our opposition figures, Ksenia Sobchak. And because Sobchak is even related personally to Putin.
Yeah, I think everybody knows that.
Yeah, everybody knows that. That means that most likely she had certain signal, you know, what kind of list can be compiled which have chances to be pardoned. But Putin refused to pardon them, and I think that the reason why he refused to do so, because he wanted to do it next to the championship, to again to maximize the media impact.
Yeah,
so
to have the perfect timing.
Yeah, so we see. I cross my fingers for it. I think that there is a strong chance that would happen, and I really pray for Sentsov and all others that they would be with us shortly.
That's what we all do. We all root for Oleg Sentsov, all the other Ukrainian political prisoners.
But we should keep
illegally.
pressure nonetheless, and we shouldn't abandon this. We shouldn't just sit tight. We should organize actions, and all my friends in different countries, and that's Russian opposition, together with the Ukrainian activists and the activists from other countries, they are doing these rallies across the world to put pressure.
Yeah. Well, let's keep on doing that, and hopefully we'll get the effect we're aiming for. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for this interesting conversation. That was Russian politician Ilya Ponomarev. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned with UATV.